Or from whom? She looked up at Jameson and Grayson, Xander and Nash. You Hawthorns, she whispered hoarsely. And your invisible ink. A black light revealed hidden writing on the postcards, just as it had on Toby's walls. The answers they were searching for, maybe all of them, could be here. But it took everything Avery had just to read the salutation, the same on every card. Dear Hannah, Avery whispered. The same backward as forward. She thought about the tabloids' accusations, that her mom had been living under a false identity. Her whole life, she'd believed her mother was Sarah. The words on the postcards blurred in front of her eyes. Tears stung. Well, Xander piped up, what do they say? Everyone else was standing. Avery was still on the floor. Everyone was waiting. I can't do this, she thought. She couldn't look at Xander. Or Jameson. Or Grayson. I'd like to be alone, Avery said at last. She realized now how Zara must have felt, reading her father's letter. Please. There was a beat of silence, then Jameson spoke. Everyone out. Within moments, the Hawthorns were gone. Orrin lingered a respectful 6 feet away, while Libby knelt beside Avery. You were about to then, Libby said softly. My mom hated Sarah, but sometimes she let her babysit. Mom always said if it weren't for Sarah, and for you, maybe Ricky would have come back to us. She said your mom owed her, and your mom acted like she did, just so I could spend time with you. But Avery couldn't remember any of it. My mom dumped me at your place for almost a week once, Libby went on. And it was the best week of my life, Avenue. Your mom baked me cupcakes for my birthday. She had all these cheap Mardi Gras beads, and we must have been wearing 10 apiece. She had these rainbow-colored clip-in hair streaks, and we wore them in our hair. She taught you to sing Happy Birthday. My mom didn't even call, but Sarah tucked me into her bed every night, she slept on the couch. And you'd crawl in beside me. And every night, your mom kissed us both goodnight. Avery was crying now. And when my mom came back, and she saw how happy I was, she never let me go over again. Libby's breath hitched, but she still managed a smile. My point is, Avery, you know who your mom was. We both do. And she was wonderful. Avery shut her eyes, willing the tears to stop. Libby was right. She knew her mother was wonderful. And if her mom had lied or kept too many secrets, maybe she'd had no choice. Taking a deep breath, Avery turned back to the postcards. There were no dates, no postmarks. They'd never been mailed. She spread them out across the floor and started with the one on the far left, black light in hand. Slowly, she began to read. Some of what was written, she didn't understand, references lost with her mother. But near the end, something caught her eye. I hope you read the letter I left you that night. I hope that some part of you understood. I hope you go far, far away, and never look back. But if you ever need anything, I hope you do exactly what I told you to do in that letter. Go to Jackson. You know what I left there. You know what it's worth. Jackson, Avery said, her voice trembling. What had Toby left for my mother in Jackson? Mississippi? Had they even been on Tobias Hawthorne's list? Setting the first postcard aside, she kept reading and realized something important. Toby had never intended to send these messages. He was writing to her, but really for himself. The postcards made it clear that he had stayed away from her on purpose. And the only other thing that was certain was that they had been in love. The next postcard read, Dear Hannah, the same backward as forward, do you remember that time on the beach? When I didn't know if I would ever walk again, and you cursed at me until I did? It sounded like you'd never cursed before in your life, but oh, how you meant it. And when I took that step and swore right back at you, do you remember what you said? That's one step, you spat. What now? You were backlit, and the sun was sinking into the horizon, and for the first time in weeks, it felt like my heart had finally remembered how to beat. What now? Avery struggled to read Toby's words without being swept up in emotion. Her whole life, her mom had never been with anyone but Ricky. It took her a while to process the implications. Toby had been injured, badly enough that he wasn't sure he would ever walk again, and her mother had cursed at him? She thought about what the old man's letter had said to Zara and Sky, that a fisherman had pulled Toby from the water. How badly had he been hurt? And where did her mother come into the picture? Her mind spun as she read the next postcard. Then it hit her, her mom had been there, in Rockaway Watch, in the aftermath of the fire. Dear Hannah, the same backward as forward. Last night, I dreamed of drowning, and I woke up with your name on my lips. You were so quiet in those early days. Do you remember that? When you couldn't stand to look at me. Wouldn't speak to me. You hated me. I felt it, and I was awful to you. I didn't know who I was or what I'd done. I remembered nothing of my life or the island. But still, I was horrid. Withdrawal was a beast, but I was worse. And you were there, and I know now that I didn't deserve a thing from you. But you changed my bandages. You held me down. You touched me, more gently than I could ever deserve. Knowing what I know now, I don't know how you did it. I should have drowned. I should have burned. My lips should never have touched yours, but for the rest of my life, Hannah, oh Hannah, I will feel every kiss. Feel your touch when I was halfway dead and wholly rotten and you loved me despite myself. He lost his memory, Avery said, looking up at Libby. Toby. Jameson and I suspected he might have had amnesia, there was a hint of it in Tobias's old will. But this letter confirms it. When he met my mom, he was hurt, in withdrawal. Probably from some kind of drug, and he didn't know who he was. She thought about the fire, about Hawthorne Island and the 3 people who hadn't survived it. Had my mom been from Rockaway Watch? Or another nearby town? Avery wondered. More postcards. More messages. The next one read, Dear Hannah, the same backward as forward. Ever since the island, I've been terrified of water, but I keep forcing myself onto ships. I know you would tell me that I don't have to, but I do. Fear is good for me. I remember all too well what it was like when I had none. If I had met you then, would your touch have broken through to me? Would you have hated me until you loved me? If we'd met in a different time, under different circumstances, would I still dream of you every night, and wonder if you dream of me? I should let you go. When everything came crashing back, when I realized what you had been hiding from me, I promised that I would. I promised you. I promised Kaylee. Kaylee Rooney. The local girl who had died on Hawthorne Island. Avery rifled through the rest of the postcards, searching for something, anything, that would tell her what to make of Toby's words. I know that I will never see you again, Hannah. That I don't deserve to. I know you will never read a word I write, and because of that, I can finally say what you forbade me to say long ago. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Hannah, oh Hannah. I'm sorry for leaving in the dead of night. I'm sorry for letting you love me even a fraction as much as I will, to the day I die, love you. I'm sorry for what I did. For the fire. And I will never stop being sorry about your sister. Toby told my mom that he was sorry about her sister, Avery said. And in another postcard, he mentioned Kaylee. She's the girl who died in the fire on Hawthorne Island. Sometime after that, my mom helped nurse Toby back to life. He didn't remember what had happened, but he said she hated him. She must have known. Known what? Libby asked, reminding Avery she wasn't just talking to herself. That Toby was responsible for her sister's death. Before she realized it, Avery had her laptop open. She began another search for Kaylee Rooney. At first, nothing new came up. She added sister, no results. She tried family, and finally found something, the one and only interview with a Rooney family member. It wasn't much of an interview. All the reporter had gotten out of Kaylee's mother was, my Kaylee was a good girl, and those rich bastards killed her. But there was also a picture. A photograph. Of her grandmother? Avery tried to wrap her mind around the possibility. The door opened behind her. "I come in peace." Max poked her head into the room, squeezed by the door, and strolled past Oren. "For the record, I'm armed only with sarcasm." "What are we doing?" Max hopped up on the desk. "Looking at a picture of my grandmother," Avery said. Saying it out loud made it feel just a little more real. "She even looks like your mom," Max added. The woman in the picture was scowling. Avery had never seen her mother scowl. Her hair was pulled into a tight bun, her mother had always worn hers loose. "How has no one made this connection?" Max asked. "With all the rumors about your mom, and people digging for a link between you and the Hawthornes, no one thought to look at the family of a girl they practically murdered? Someone must have recognized her, once you made the news. Why hasn't anyone tipped off the press?" Avery thought about Eli, how he'd sold her out for a payday. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I do know that whatever Tobias Hawthorne left in that safe deposit box, that police report, his investigators' files, I want to see it. All of it. And I want to see it now." Oren retrieved the key from his toolbox, but instead of giving it to Avery, he handed it to Zara. Then he turned to Avery. "Get ready for school." "Have you lost your mind?" she asked. "I'm not going to school." "It's the safest place for you right now," Oren said. "Elisa will agree with me." "Elisa's busy doing damage control from the interview," Avery shot back. "The last thing she wants is me out in public. No one would question why I'd want to stay home." "Country Day isn't public," Oren countered. Seconds later, he had Elisa on speakerphone, and she echoed everything he said. Avery had no choice. She put on her private school uniform, her best face, and the mask of normalcy. A pleated skirt. A white dress shirt. A burgundy blazer. Her hair tousled just so, her makeup minimal, except for the eyes. Preppy with an edge. She felt like she had on her very first day. No one looked directly at her, but the way they didn't look was louder than stares. Jameson and Xander slipped out of the car behind her, each taking one of her sides. At least this time it was her and the Hawthornes against the world. Avery made it through the day bit by bit, but by lunch, she was done. Done with the stares. Done pretending everything was normal. Jameson found her in the archive. "You look like someone who needs a distraction." A few feet away, Oren crossed his arms over his chest. No, Jameson gave her bodyguard his most innocent look. "I know you. I know your distractions. You're not taking her skydiving or parasailing. No racetracks. No motorcycles. No axe throwing." "Axe throwing?" Avery asked. Jameson turned back to Oren. "How do you feel about roofs?" 10 minutes later, Jameson and Avery were back on top of the art center. He rolled out turf and teed up a ball. "Keep away from the edge," Oren warned. Avery waited for Jameson to ask about the postcards. But all he did was hand her a club. She lined up the shot. Part of her wanted him to come stand behind her, to wrap his arms around hers. Instead, she dropped the club. "My mother was Kaylee Rooney's sister," she said. "What do you think Toby left in Jackson that's worth so much?" "And where in Jackson?" he asked. "How long did Toby's amnesia last? Why stay dead once his memory returned?" "Guilt. Toby loathed himself almost as much as he loved my mom," Avery said. It was the first time she had admitted that out loud. "Eris?" Jameson's eyes caught hers. She knew he wanted to ask her something. Knock, knock. Xander stuck his head through the rooftop door. "I just happened to have my ear pressed against this door, and I might have overheard some things. Luckily, I also have a suggestion." Jameson looked like he might throttle his brother. Avery glanced at Oren, who said nothing. She could practically hear him thinking, "Not my job." "Call her." Xander tossed Avery his phone. A number was already entered. "Call who?" Jameson asked. "Your grandmother," Xander said. Like I told you, I inadvertently overheard some things while my ear was casually pressed to the steel door. Kaylee Rooney's mother is your grandmother, Avery. That's a piece of the puzzle we've never had before. And that, he nodded at the screen, is her number. You don't have to call, Jameson told her quietly. Yes, I do. Her heart lodged in her throat, but she pressed the call button. The line rang. Once. Twice. Again and again. No one picked up. No voicemail. Still, she couldn't bring herself to hang up. Finally, someone answered. Hello? This is Avery, I know who you are. At first she thought it was a man, but as the voice went on, Avery realized it was a woman. If my worthless daughter had taught you the first thing about this family, you wouldn't dare have dialed my number. If she hadn't run, I would have put a bullet in her myself. You think I want a dime of your blood money, girl? You think you're family? You hang up that phone. You forget my name. And if you're lucky, I'll make sure this family, this whole town, forget yours. The line went dead. Avery stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. You okay there, buddy? Xander asked gently. She couldn't answer. She couldn't say anything. Her grandmother's words echoed in her head, sharp as blades. Jameson stepped beside her, resting his hands on her shoulders. He guided her toward the edge of the roof. The very edge, close enough that Oren called out, but Jameson didn't stop. He only lifted her arms wide, then stretched his own until both of them stood in close your eyes. Breathe, he whispered. She closed her eyes. She breathed. She felt his breathing, steady against hers. By the time the SUV rolled through the gates of Hawthorne House that afternoon, Avery was still shaken. To her surprise, Zara was waiting in the foyer. For the first time since Avery had met Tobias's eldest daughter, she looked less than perfect. Her eyes were puffy, and in her hands was a folder, only an inch thick, but enough to make Avery stop in her tracks. That's what was in the safe deposit box? Xander asked. Do you want an overview? Zara replied, her voice hoarse, or would you prefer to read it for yourself? Both, Jameson said. First came the big picture. Then, together, they would comb through every page. Searching for subtle hints, hidden clues, anything Zara might have missed. She thought about Grayson, about where he was. Some part of her still expected him to be here, waiting, even though he had barely spoken to her, or even looked at her, since the interview. Overview? Avery asked Zara, forcing herself to focus. Toby had been in and out of rehab for a year or two before his disappearance. He was obviously angry, though at the time I didn't know why. From what my father pieced together, Toby met other boys in rehab. That summer, they all went on a road trip together. It seems they partied, and slept, their way across the country. One young woman in particular, a waitress at a bar where the boys stopped, was quite informative when my father's investigator tracked her down. She told him exactly what Toby had been snorting, and exactly what he said the morning after they'd slept together. What did he say? Xander asked. Zara's tone never wavered. He told her he was going to burn it all down. Avery stared at Zara for a moment, then shifted her gaze to Jameson. He had been there when Sheffield Grayson claimed Toby was responsible for the fire. Even after reading the postcards, even after seeing the guilt Toby carried, some part of her had still believed the fire was an accident, that Toby and his friends had been drunk or high, and things had simply spiraled out of control. Did Toby happen to specify what he was going to burn down? Jameson asked. No. But right before they reached Rockaway Watch, he purchased a large quantity of accelerant. He set the fire. He killed them all, Avery thought. Was that in the police report? She managed to ask. What Toby said about burning it all down, did the police know? No, Zara replied. The woman Toby said it to had no idea who he was. Even when our investigators found her, she remained entirely in the dark. The police never tracked her down. They never had motive. but they knew about the accelerant. From what the arson investigators could tell, the house on Hawthorne Island had been thoroughly soaked. The gas had been turned on. Avery pressed her hand to her mouth. She gasped. Toby wasn't an idiot. Jameson's expression was sharp. Unless this was some kind of suicide pact, he would have had a contingency plan to make sure he and his friends weren't caught in the flames. Zara closed her eyes tightly. That's the thing, she whispered. The house was soaked in accelerant. The gas was turned on. But no one ever lit a match. There was a lightning storm that night. Toby might have planned to burn down the house from a safe distance. The others might even have helped him. But none of them actually set the fire. Lightning, Xander said. If the gas was already on, if the floorboards had been soaked in accelerant, had the house exploded? Had they still been inside? Or had the fire spread too quickly across the island? Avery couldn't stop wondering. For months, my father believed Toby had truly died. Zara continued. He convinced the police to bury the report. It wasn't arson, not technically. At best, it was attempted arson. And they'd never finished the attempt. Why didn't the police just blame it on the lightning? Avery asked. She'd read the press coverage, none of it had mentioned the weather. The house went up like a fireball, Zara replied. They could see it from the mainland. It was obvious it wasn't just a lightning strike. And the girl who was there with them, Kaylee Rooney, she'd just gotten out of juvenile detention for arson. It was easier to deflect blame onto her than to pin it on nature. If she was a juvenile, the record would have been sealed, Xander pointed out. The old man unsealed it. Anything to protect the family name, Jameson said. Avery thought of her grandmother's words, how she had called Tobias's fortune blood money. Had he left it to her out of guilt? I wouldn't feel too sorry for Kaylee Rooney, Zara said coldly. What happened to her? What happened to all of them was a tragedy, but she was far from innocent. From what the investigator pieced together, the Rooney family controls nearly every drug that comes through Rockaway Watch. They're known for being merciless, and Kaylee was almost certainly already elbow-deep in the family business. A chill went through Avery. If what Zara said was true, then the part about the bullet might not have been metaphorical. What about the fisherman who pulled Toby from the water, she asked. Did the file say anything about him? The storm was severe that night. At first, my father believed no boats were out. But eventually, the investigator found someone who swore there was one boat on the water. Its owner was practically a shut-in. He lived in a shack near an abandoned lighthouse in Rockaway Watch. From what townsfolk said, most believed he wasn't quite right in the head. Hence, taking his boat out in the middle of a man-killing storm, Zara explained. He finds Toby, Avery said. Pulls him from the water. Brings him home. And no one's the wiser. My father believed Toby had lost his memory, though whether from injury or psychological trauma wasn't clear. Somehow this man, Jackson Curry, managed to nurse him back to health. Not just the man, Avery thought. My mom was there, too. She was so caught up in thoughts of her mother, piecing together that part of the story, that she almost missed the name Zara had said. Jackson, Jameson repeated slowly. Eris, the fisherman's name was Jackson. Avery froze. Toby hadn't meant Jackson, Mississippi. He had meant Jackson Curry, the fisherman who saved him. What I don't understand, Zara continued, is why Toby was so intent on running once he got his memory back, assuming he did. He had to have known that our security could protect him from any threat. The Rooneys may run Rockaway Watch, but it's still a small town. Small people with a small reach. The legal situation had already been handled. Toby could have come home. But he fought it. He hadn't come home because he didn't think he deserved to. Having read the postcards, Avery understood Toby. A sharp ringing disrupted her thoughts. Her phone. She glanced down, Grayson was calling. Hello, she answered. Avery, Grayson said. Where are you? There was a pause, then an invitation to switch to video. She accepted, and his face appeared on her screen. After some convincing, Max told me what was written on your postcards. About your mother. Do you remember when I said I was in this? That I would help you? He turned his phone. The screen filled with ruins, charred wreckage, blackened trees. That's what I'm doing. You went to Hawthorne Island without us? Xander demanded. Avery realized then, he'd done this for her. Hawthorne Island, Grayson confirmed. And Rockaway Watch. I wouldn't call the locals friendly, but I'm optimistic I'll find our missing piece, whatever that might be. Rockaway Watch, Xander repeated slowly. The name echoed in Avery's mind. Her stomach twisted. That's my mother's family's town. Grayson, she said urgently. You don't understand. My mother changed her name and left that place because her family is dangerous. I don't know what they know about Toby, or if that's why they hated her so much, but they blame the Hawthorns for their daughter's death. You have to get out of there. Beside her, Oren cursed. Grayson turned his phone back toward himself, locking eyes with her. Avery, have I ever given you reason to believe I'm particularly averse to danger? He was arrogant enough to think himself bulletproof, and honorable enough to see a promise through to the end. You have to get out of there, she repeated. Before she could press further, Jameson leaned over her shoulder, shouting at his brother. You're looking for a man named Jackson Curry. He's a recluse, lives near an abandoned lighthouse. Talk to him. See what he knows. Grayson gave a small, self-assured smile. Got it. It was another hour before they heard from him again. Oren spent most of that time calling in favors on the West Coast. Avery wasn't the only one worried about a Hawthorne being anywhere near Rockaway Watch. When her phone finally rang, Grayson was less than thrilled about the security detail that had caught up with him. Did you find him? Jameson asked. Jackson Curry? He has a very colorful vocabulary, Grayson reported dryly. And the land around his shack is booby-trapped. Father and his investigator ran into the same issues, Zara said behind them. They never got a word out of the man. Grayson, you should come home. This is a fool's errand. We have other leads we could follow. Normally, Avery would have demanded to know what those leads were, but all she could think about was Toby. He'd told her mother to go to Jackson if she ever needed anything. That had to mean something, that if her mom had shown up, Jackson would have opened the door. Can you get close enough to put me on the phone with him? Avery asked. Assuming no one tries to restrain me, Grayson shot a pointed glance over his shoulder, presumably at his security detail, then turned back to look straight into the camera at Avery. I can try. Jackson's shack was, in every sense, a shack. Avery would have bet money that he'd built it himself. It wasn't large. It had no windows. Grayson knocked again. The only response was a large rock hurled from somewhere above. I don't like this, Oren muttered. Neither did Avery. But they were so close, not just to Toby, but to answers. She knew more now than she ever had before. Maybe she even knew everything. And yet, this felt like her chance, maybe her last chance, to know her mother in a way she never had. To understand what she and Toby had shared. See if he'll talk to me, Avery told Grayson. Tell him, her voice caught. Tell him that Hannah's daughter is on the phone. Hannah Rooney. It was the first time she had said the name her mother had been born with. The phone's image blurred as Grayson lowered it. She heard him yelling something in the background. I told him, Grayson said after a moment. No reply. I think Avery never got to hear the rest. The distinct sound of metal on metal cut through the call. Grayson swung the camera in time for her to see a heavy door creak open. First, she saw the enormous beard. Then she saw the narrowed eyes. Where is she? Jackson grunted. Here, Avery said quickly. I'm here. I'm Hannah's daughter. No, his voice was sharp, spitting the word like a curse. Don't trust phones. And just like that, he slammed the door shut. What does that even mean, he doesn't trust phones? Jameson demanded. What's not to trust? Avery's thoughts spun. Jackson had shown his hand. He would talk to her. Not to Grayson. Not to Tobias Hawthorne's investigators. He was paranoid, and he didn't trust phones. But in person, he would talk. I'll call you back, Avery told Grayson, then immediately placed another call, to Elisa. I'm allowed 3 nights per month away from Hawthorne House, Avery said. So far, I've only spent 1. Elisa didn't like the idea of her going to Hawthorne Island. Orrin liked it even less. But there was no stopping her now. Fine. Orrin gave her a long, hard look. I'll arrange security for you. His eyes narrowed. And only you. Beside her, Xander leapt to his feet. I object. Overruled, Orrin shot back without hesitation. We're flying into a high-threat situation. I want at least an 8-person security team on the ground. We cannot afford a single distraction. Avery is the package, the only package, or I'll duct tape all 3 of you to chairs and call it a day. Avery's gaze drifted to Jameson. She waited for him to argue, to push back. Jameson had never sat out a race in his life. He wasn't capable of it. So why wasn't he negotiating with Orrin now? He caught the look she was giving him. What? You're not going to complain about this? Avery stared at him. What would I, heiress? Avery knew Jameson liked to play to win, and besides, Grayson was already there. She didn't say any of that out loud. Fine. She held Jameson's gaze a moment longer before turning to Orrin. I'll go alone. It took just under 4 hours to fly from Texas to the Oregon coast. Including travel time to and from the airport, closer to 5. Now, she was standing on Jackson Curry's doorstep. Are you ready? Grayson asked quietly beside her. She nodded. You men will have to stay back, Grayson told Orrin. They can set up a perimeter, but I'd bet a very large amount of money Curry won't open the door if Avery shows up with her own army. Orrin gave a sharp nod and signaled to his men, who spread out. If everything went as planned, her mother's family would never even know she was here. Avery stepped forward and knocked. The first knock was hesitant, then she banged her fist against the door. I'm here, she said, raising her voice. For real this time. No response. My name's Avery. I'm Hannah's daughter. If she'd come all this way and he still refused to open the door, she had no idea what else she could do. Toby wrote my mother postcards, she called. He said that if she ever needed anything, she should come here. I know you saved Toby's life after the fire. I know my mom helped you. I know they were in love. I don't know if her family found out, or what happened exactly. The door swung open. That family always finds out, Jackson Curry grunted. Over the phone, Avery hadn't realized just how big he was. At least 6'6", broad and solid, built like one of Orrin's men. Is that why my mom changed her name? Avery asked. Is that why she ran? Curry stared at her, his expression as hard as stone. You don't look much like Hannah, he said at last. For a terrifying moment, Avery thought he might slam the door in her face. Except for the eyes. With that, he let the door swing open the rest of the way. Avery stepped inside with Grayson and Orrin behind her. Just the girl, Jackson said. She knew Orrin would argue. Please, she told him quickly. I'll stay in the doorway. Orrin's voice was steel. She stays in my sight at all times. You don't come closer than 3 feet to her. Avery expected Curry to bristle at that, but instead he nodded. I like him, he said gruffly. Then he turned to Grayson. The boy stays outside, too. Grayson didn't like it, but he stepped back. She faced him again. Please, just tell me about my mother. Not much to tell, he replied. She used to come check on me now and then. Always nagging me to go to the hospital over every little scrape. She was studying to be a nurse. Wasn't half bad at stitches. The thought of her mother in nursing school felt almost startlingly mundane. She helped you take care of Toby after you pulled him from the water? Avery asked. He nodded. She did. Can't say she particularly enjoyed it, but she was always going on about some oath. The Hippocratic Oath, she thought. First, do no harm, Avery said. It was the most ridiculous thing for Rooney to say, Curry grunted. She helped you treat Toby, even though she knew who he was. Even though she blamed him for her sister's death, Avery pressed. You telling this story, or am I? Jackson cut in. Avery fell silent. After a beat, her silence was rewarded. She loved her sister, you know. Always said Kaylee wasn't like the rest of them. Hannah was going to get her out. Her mom couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years older than Avery was now when all of this had gone down. Kaylee would have been her younger sister. The realization made Avery's chest ache, and she fought the urge to cry. At this point, she wasn't even sure what else to ask, but she pushed on. How long did Toby stay here after the accident? 3 months, give or take. He mostly healed up in that time, Jackson said. And they fell in love, Avery murmured. Silence followed. In other circumstances, it might have been harder for her to understand, but if Toby had been suffering from amnesia, he wouldn't have known what had happened on the island, or who Kaylee was to her mother. And her mom, she'd had a big heart. Maybe she'd hated him at first, but he was a Hawthorne, and Avery knew all too well that Hawthorne boys had a way about them. What happened after 3 months, she asked. Kid's memory came back. They had a big fight that night. He came real close to killing himself, but she wouldn't let him. He wanted to turn himself in, but she wouldn't let him do that either, Jackson said. Why not? Avery asked. No matter how much her mother had loved him, Toby was still responsible for 3 deaths. He'd planned to set a fire that night, even if he hadn't lit the match. How long you think the person who killed Kaylee Rooney would last in any jail around here? Jackson asked grimly. Hannah wanted to run away, just the 2 of them, but the boy said no. He couldn't do that to her. Do what to her? Avery pressed. Her mom had run anyway. She'd changed her name. And 3 years later, Avery was born. If I could make sense of either of them, Jackson muttered. Then he tossed something at her feet. Behind her, Orrin twitched, but he didn't stop her. Avery bent to pick it up and found 2 things, a letter and a small metal disc, no bigger than a quarter. She unfolded the letter. It didn't take long to realize it was the one Toby had mentioned in the postcards. Dear Hannah, the same backward as forward. Please don't hate me, or if you do, hate me for the right reasons. Hate me for being angry and selfish and stupid. Hate me for getting high and deciding that burning the dock wasn't enough, we had to burn the house to really hit my father where it hurt. Hate me for letting the others play with me, for treating it like a game. Hate me for being the one who survived. But don't hate me for leaving. You can tell me over and over again that I never would have struck the match. You can believe that. On good days, maybe I will, too. But 3 people are still dead because of me. I can't stay here. I can't stay with you. I don't deserve to. I won't go home, either. I won't let my father pretend this away. Sooner or later, he'll figure this out. He always does. He'll come for me, Hannah. He'll try to make it all better. And if I let him find me, if I let him wag his silver tongue in my ear, I might start to believe him. I might be tempted to let him wash away that only billions can, so you and I can live my sins, the way happily ever after. But you deserve better than that. Your sister deserved better. And I deserve to fade away. I won't kill myself. You extracted that promise, and I will keep it. I won't turn myself in. But we can't be together. I can't do that to you. I know you, I know that loving me must hurt you. And I won't hurt you again. Leave Rockaway Watch, Hannah. Without Kaylee, there's nothing holding you here. Change your name. Start anew. You love fairy tales, I know, but I can't be your happily ever after. We can't stay here in our little castle forever. You have to find a new castle. You have to move on. You have to live, for me. If you ever need anything, go to Jackson. You know what the circle is worth. You know why. You know everything. You might be the only person on this planet who knows the real me. Hate me, if you can, for all the reasons I deserve it. But don't hate me for leaving while you sleep. I knew you wouldn't let me go, and I cannot bear to say goodbye. Signed Harry. Avery looked up from the letter, her ears ringing. He signed it Harry. Jackson tilted his head. That's what I called him, before I knew his real name. It's what Hannah called him, too. She closed her eyes and let her head fall for a moment. She had no idea what had happened between Toby leaving this shack 20 years ago and her mother's death. But if he was her father, then he must have found her again at some point. They had to have been together, even if only once. He found me after she died, Avery whispered. He told me his name was Harry. She's dead? Jackson stared at her. Little Hannah? Avery nodded. Natural causes. Given the weight of the moment, it felt important to clarify. Jackson turned abruptly. A second later, he was rummaging through the cabinets. He pulled something out and thrust it at her, stepping close enough that their fingertips brushed as she took it. I was supposed to give this to Harry, he grunted. If he ever came back. Hannah sent them here, year after year. But if she's gone, only seems right to give them to you. Avery looked down at what he had pressed into her hands. She was holding another bundle of postcards. It was one thing to read Toby's love letters to her mom. It was another entirely to read hers to him. She sounded like herself, so much that she could hear her voice with every single word Avery read. She loved him. It hurt to love him, and she loved him anyway. He left her. She loved him anyway, Avery thought. That string of thoughts cycled through her head on repeat as they drove back to the airstrip where the jets awaited. One thing was clear from the postcards, her mom would have done it all again. Are you okay? Grayson asked beside her. No, she admitted. Not really. Her entire life, Avery had grown up knowing she was enough for her mom. Her mom hadn't dated. She hadn't wanted or needed anything from Ricky. Avery's life had been full of love, but romance had never been something she needed, or even considered. Now she understood why. Because her mom had loved Toby. Close your eyes, she could hear Max telling her. Picture yourself standing on a cliff overlooking the ocean. The wind is whipping through your hair. The sun is setting. You long, body and soul, for one thing, for one person. You hear footsteps behind you. You turn. Who's there? Her answer had always been, no one. But after reading her mom's postcards, it was getting harder to ignore Grayson's presence beside her, and even harder not to think about Jameson. Her eyes stung. She stared through her tears at the postcards. At first, they were about her mom's love for Toby, but later, they were all about Avery. Avery took her first steps today. Avery's first word is oh. Today, Avery invented a game that combines Candyland, chutes and ladders, and checkers. On and on they went, until the postcards stopped. Until her mom died. Avery's hands shook as she held the last postcard, and Grayson's hand found hers. She wrote these, Avery said, her voice breaking, to Toby. About me. It was clear now, Toby was her father. Grayson's phone buzzed. It's Jameson, he said. Her heart skipped a beat, but she managed, answer it. He did. We're on our way back to the plane, Grayson told him. Avery knew Jameson was asking what they'd found. She held up the small metal disc Jackson had given her. This is what Toby left with Jackson. Grayson stared at it, then switched to video chat so Jameson could see, too. "What do you think it is?" Avery asked. The disc was gold, maybe an inch across. It looked like a coin, though not one she had ever seen before. One side was smooth, the other was engraved with 9 concentric circles. "It doesn't look like it's worth much," Jameson said. "We're incoming," Oren announced to someone. "Sweep the plane." When they reached the airstrip, Oren opened Avery's door, and she was escorted to the jet with 3 guards. Beside her, Grayson switched Jameson back to audio, keeping the line open. But Avery's mind was far away, full of Toby and her mom. The night air was bitterly cold. As she walked toward the plane, a brutal wind picked up, then sudden stillness. A single, high-pitched beep. And the world exploded. Fire. Noise. Nothing. Everything hurt. She couldn't see or hear. When blurred images began to form, she saw only fire. And Grayson, standing 100 feet away. She waited for him to run to her, but he didn't. Then, nothing again. Darkness. A voice. "Let's play a game." Her mom's voice. "I have a secret." "I'm tired of playing," Avery whispered. "I'm tired." "I know. But, Avery, you have to play, just one more time." "Okay, baby?" "You can't let go." Lightning tore through her chest. "Clear," someone shouted. Another bolt. "Clear." Avery wanted to let go, to stop breathing, to stop hurting. "You have to hang on for me," her mom urged. "You're not real," Avery gasped. "You're dead. So either this is a dream, and you're not even here, or I'm dead too," she thought. Avery dreamed she was running through the halls of Hawthorne House. She hit a staircase, and at the bottom lay a dead girl. At first, she thought it was Emily Laughlin, but when she drew closer, she realized it was herself. She stood at the edge of the ocean. Each time a wave crested and rushed toward her, she thought it would swallow her whole. She was ready for it. As the darkness beckoned, a voice called to her, "Jameson Winchester Hawthorne." Jameson's voice came again, louder, sharper. "She was dying, and you just stood there. And don't tell me it was shock." Avery tried to open her eyes, but she couldn't. "You would know, Jamie," another voice answered, cold and biting. "You'd know about standing there and watching someone die," said Grayson. "Emily. It always comes back to Emily with you," Jameson snapped. Avery wanted to tell them she could hear, but her mouth wouldn't move. Everything was dark. Everything hurt. "You know what I think, Gray?" Jameson's voice cut through the silence. "I think the whole martyr act was just a lie you told yourself. I don't think you stepped back from Avery for my sake. I think you needed an excuse, so you could stay safe on the other side of that line." "You don't know what you're talking about," Grayson shot back. "You can't let go. You couldn't when Emily was alive, no matter what she did. And you can't now. Are you done?" Grayson was yelling now. They both were. Shouting over each other. And then, silence. She sat at a chessboard. Across from her was a man she hadn't seen since she was 6 years old. Tobias Hawthorne. He picked up his queen, then set it back down. Instead, he placed 3 new objects on the board, a corkscrew, a funnel, and a chain. Avery stared at them. "I don't know what to do with these." Silently, Tobias added a 4th object, a small metal disc. "I don't know what to do with that either," she whispered. "Don't look at me, young lady," Tobias replied. "This is your subconscious. All of this, it's a game of your making, not mine." "What if I don't want to play anymore?" she asked. He leaned back, lifting his queen once more. "Then stop." The first thing she became aware of was pressure on her chest, like a cinder block weighing her down. She struggled against it, and suddenly, every nerve in her body lit up, screaming. Her eyes flew open. Machines. Tubes. So many tubes connecting to her body. I'm in the hospital, she thought. Until the room came into focus. She wasn't in a hospital. She was in her room at Hawthorne House. It took everything she had not to claw the tubes out of her body. Memory seeped back in, Jameson's voice, Grayson's voice, lightning and fire, and then it hit her, there had been a bomb. A nearby monitor began blaring, and the next thing she knew, a woman in a white coat rushed into the room. When Avery recognized her, she thought she must be dreaming again. Dr. Liu? Welcome back, Avery. I need you to lie back and breathe. Dr. Liu was Max's mother. Avery was given pain medication. By the time Dr. Liu let Libby and Max into the room, she was already feeling loopy. I gave her some morphine, Avery heard Dr. Liu tell Libby. If she wants to sleep, let her. Max came to Avery's bedside. Your mom is here, she said. Correct, Max replied, settling into the chair beside her. At Hawthorne House, Avery added. Very good, Max said. Now tell me, what year is it, and who's the president? She kept going. I called her when Elisa brought you here. Lawyer lady more or less stole your fine, comatose self from the hospital in Oregon, and everyone was very mad. We weren't about to let her staff you up with doctors of her choosing. We needed someone we could trust. I might have been disowned, but I'm not stupid. I called the great Dr. Liu, and she came. You were not disowned, Max's mom said firmly. I distinctly remember disowning. Agree to disagree, Max countered. The obvious hit Avery, if Elisa had managed to bring her here, and Max had had time to call her mother. How long was I out, she asked. She looked at her mom, who nodded. Max opened her mouth, but Libby answered first. 7 days. A full week? Avery breathed. Libby's hair was dyed again, not one color this time, but dozens. Avery thought about what Libby had once said about her 9th birthday. About the cupcakes their mom had baked, and the rainbow colors she had clipped into her hair. How much of her life, Avery wondered, had Libby spent trying to get that one perfect moment back? They told me you might not wake up. Libby's voice shook. I'm okay, Avery said, though she realized she had no idea if that was true. She glanced toward Dr. Liu. Your body's been healing nicely, Dr. Liu assured her. The coma was medically induced. We tried to wake you up 2 days ago, but there was some unexpected swelling in your brain. That's under control now. Avery looked past her, toward the doorway. Do the others know? She asked quietly. That I'm awake? Dr. Liu moved closer to the bedside. Let's take this one step at a time. Eventually, they let Oren in. The bomb was planted inside the plane's engine, he told her. Forensics suggests it had been there for days and was triggered remotely. Avery noticed the half-healed wounds running down the side of his jaw and across the backs of his hands. Whoever triggered the explosion must have mistimed it, Oren said. If you'd been 2 steps closer, you would have died. His voice tightened. 2 of my men didn't make it. Devastating guilt drilled through Avery, a needle-thin icicle straight to the heart. She felt heavy, numb. I'm sorry. Oren didn't tell her not to be. He didn't say what they were both thinking, that if she hadn't pushed to go to Rockaway Watch, his men would still be alive. Wait, Avery's eyes widened. You said that bomb was planted days before it exploded? Then the Roonies, they weren't the ones who, no, Oren confirmed. Avery's chest tightened. Someone else had planted that bomb. It must have been after True North. She tried to sound logical, tried to keep her thoughts detached, but the memories pressed in anyway, fire, lightning, pain. That man at True North, the professional, her voice caught. Who was he working for? Before Oren could answer, the sharp rhythm of heels echoed across the wood floor. Elisa appeared in the doorway. Her gaze fell on Avery, and she staggered slightly, reaching out to the armoire for balance. Thank God, she muttered. She closed her eyes, fighting for composure, then opened them again. I appreciate you telling your men to stand down. That was directed at Oren, not Avery. You have 5 minutes, he replied, voice cold. Hurt flickered across Elisa's face, and Avery remembered what Max had said. Elisa had moved her here without permission. With Avery's life on the line, she had gambled everything to protect her inheritance. Don't look at me like that, Elisa told Avery. It worked, didn't it? True. Avery was alive. It cost me dearly, Elisa admitted. It cost me this family. But it worked. Avery didn't know how to respond. What's the status of the police investigation into the bombing? She asked instead. Do they know who? The police made an arrest yesterday. The job was professional, but they traced it back to Sky Hawthorne and, she hesitated. Ricky Grams. The name shouldn't have mattered, but for a moment, Avery was 4 years old again. She saw Ricky lifting her onto his shoulders, laughing. His name is on my birth certificate, she whispered. If I die, he and Libby are my heirs. There's something else you should know, Elisa said carefully. We got back the DNA test you ordered. I know. Avery's voice was flat. Ricky's not my father. Elisa moved closer, standing at the side of her bed. That's the thing, Avery. He is. Later, Avery found herself staring at her birth certificate, at the signature. None of it made sense. All the clues had pointed to Toby. He had sought her out after her mother's death, he and her mom had been in love, and Tobias Hawthorne had left her his fortune. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, I have a secret, about the day you were born. Upside, downside, inside, outside, left side, right side. A voice pulled her from her thoughts. Jameson stood in the doorway. What's missing? He asked softly, stepping closer until he was beside her bed. Beside, she whispered. He stared into her eyes. Expression unreadable. I have to say, Eris, Jameson murmured, I'm not a big fan of comas. His voice sounded the same, but his expression was something she had never seen before. She knew he wasn't joking. I came to see you, Jameson told her. Every day. The least you could have done was wake up while I was here. Every day? She asked softly. She remembered standing at the edge of the ocean. She remembered a voice. His. Every day, Eris. But if I'm not the one you want to see, of course I want to see you. That part was true. But you don't have to tell me I'm special. Tell me I matter, she thought. Yes, I do, Jameson cut in. You aren't a prize to be won. You're not a puzzle or a riddle or a clue. You aren't a mystery to me, Avery, because deep down, we're the same. You might not see that. But there's no one besides the two of us who would have gone back, in the wake of that bomb, to look for this. He uncurled his fingers. In his palm lay a small metal disc.